Welcome back to Gamma Movie Recap. Today I'm going to show you a 2005 epic historical fiction drama film called Kingdom of Heaven. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. Two men and a priest are preparing a burial for the body of a woman who is rumored to have committed suicide on a cold winter's day in France in 1184. In addition, that woman is the spouse of Balian, the blacksmith and the priest's half-brother. The priest takes the cross necklace from the woman's neck while examining her body, and then all of a sudden, men in crusader uniforms pass by and head toward the isolated settlement in the country. Because suicide is a serious sin in the Catholic faith, the corpse is beheaded and improperly buried. Balian, who is grieving over the sudden death of his wife and stillborn child, is released from prison by the command of the bishop-priest. Balian visits the grave of his wife and the priest insults him, but he ignores him and dismisses his remark. At home, he finally decides to let go of his family by burning their belongings and start working again as a blacksmith with his apprentice. The Crusaders, alongside Godfrey, the Baron of Ibelin, visits Balian. Then Godfrey introduces himself as his father and offers to bring him to Jerusalem with him. Balian refuses to leave, and his rejection prompts Godfrey to leave immediately, but still hopes he will change his mind. The priest heard the conversation between Godfrey and Balian, and later that day he persistently convinces Balian to leave their village in an attempt to claim Balian's property. The priest pushes too far as to reveal Balian's wife beheaded. Accustomed to the death of suicide, it prevents them from ascending to heaven, which causes Balian to outrage. Balian violently kills the priest by burning him and takes his wife's necklace from him. Balian catches up with Godfrey with a desire of finding forgiveness and redemption for him and his dead wife's sins at the Holy Land of Jerusalem. Godfrey takes Balian with him and teaches him swordsmanship. But Godfrey's nephew interrupts the instruction in the middle, demanding that Balian be taken into custody for the priest's murder. Because Godfrey won't give up Balian, his nephew starts the battle and mercilessly murders some of Godfrey's men while also critically wounding Godfrey. Godfrey kills his nephew to overcome them, but not before he is fatally shot in the ribs by a broken arrow. Balian and the Crusaders proceed on their return trip to Jerusalem. As they reach the pilgrim camp on the road to Messina, Guy de Lusignan, Godfrey's stepson and an inheritor to the throne of Jerusalem as the husband of Princess Sibylla, rudely greets and insults Godfrey while resting at the camp. When they arrive at Messina, which is the port to Jerusalem, the dying Godfrey grants knighthood to Balian as the knight and Baron of Ibelin and instructs him to serve the king of Jerusalem and its people. After the brief ceremony, Godfrey succumbs to his injury and Balian is set to sail a journey to Jerusalem by the wishes of his father. During the journey, a violent storm destroys Balian's ship, leaving him and a horse as the only survivors in a barren area. Balian gains custody of the horse, but all of a sudden two Saracen horsemen, a Muslim term for a master and a servant, appears, demanding that Balian deliver the horse to the master on the grounds that it is his property. When Balian refuses to give the horse, the master fights with Balian, which ultimately results in the master's death. When Balian is in desperate need of assistance getting to Jerusalem, he spares the servant's life in order to help him get there. Upon their arrival at Jerusalem, Balian kindly offers to give the servant the horse and the freedom from being a slave. The servant acknowledges Balian's kindness and reveals that the Saracen that Balian killed is a known knight among the Saracens and that he should be careful. As Balian treads his way in the busy streets of the land, the remaining men of Godfrey stalk him, seeing that he carries the sword of Godfrey. Balian immediately notices them, and the men question him, to which he replies with familiarity about Godfrey. Satisfied with Balian's answers, the men accept him as the new Baron of Ibelin. Godfrey's servants warmly welcome Balian as he resides in Jerusalem, and he wanders around the mansion admiring the glory of the place. Later that day, Princess Sibylla comes to the mansion in search of Balian. Instead of introducing himself, he modestly offers her a drink, to which Sibylla responds with a knowing glance before departing. Soon after, Godfrey's close friend Tiberius, the marshal of the office of Jerusalem, is introduced to Balian. They discuss Saladin, the notorious commander of the Saracens with over 200,000 soldiers, and the disputes pertaining to the peace oath taken by Saladin and the king of Jerusalem. Balian also encounters King Baldwin IV of Jerusalem, a leper who also happens to be quite fond of Godfrey and his tutor, and who found out he was afflicted with leprosy. The leper king invites Balian for chess and imparts him the wisdom that the man himself is his own soul's keeper, no matter who the man serves. The leper king then shows Balian the fortification of the city of Jerusalem and asks for Balian's suggestions to improve it, which Balian skillfully gives ways to strengthen the walls, making the leper king fond of him. As Balian steps on the very land of Ibelin which he inherited from Godfrey, his first mission is to address the problem of drought in his land. Because of Balian's dedication to his land, he gains the respect of his people. Sibylla pays him another visit and spends a few days in Ibelin, while Badelusingnan, his spouse, travels to the east. Because of Balian's noble status, Sibylla begins to love him more and more every day. Eventually, they spend a special evening together and start dating covertly. But in the middle of all the good things that are happening in Ibelin, Guy and Reynold of Chatillon, along with the other Templars, plan to massacre a caravan of Saracens, killing a lot of them and violating the king's peace treaty. When Saladin learns of it, they strike back, storming Reynold's Carrack castle in an attempt to make him answer for it. Balian, by the orders of the leper king, is set to protect the villagers of Carrack. With his men outnumbered by Saladin's cavalry, they still bravely charge at them to give the villagers time to escape. As the battle intensifies, Balian and his men are defeated and they are captured by the enemy. Balian meets the servant again, whom he freed, and reveals himself as Saladin's chancellor, and repays Balian's kindness by sparing them. As the cavalry of Saladin and the leper king reach the battleground, the leper king negotiates with Saladin and promises that he himself will punish Reynold in exchange that the Muslims retreat to avoid bloodshed, which Saladin accepts. In fury, the leper king commands Reynold to kiss his disease-inflicted hand and beats him, which makes the leper king to collapse in exhaustion. Tiberius then arrests Reynold and sends him to prison. The transpire of events weaken the leper king, and he presumes his time is near. He calls for Balian to conclude his affairs and declares his wishes for his 6-year-old nephew to be crowned king, and that Balian be the new commander of the army of Jerusalem, which Balian accepts. The leper king also offers Sibylla's hand, his sister, for marriage, knowing their affection, but primarily with the intent to protect the throne from Guy, as this will inevitably cause a war against the Saracens. Balian declines the offer because it will result in Guy's execution, something his conscience cannot bear. Disbelieving that Balian would reject her, Sibylla breaks up with him, telling him he will regret it, and that one day he will wish he had done a little evil for the greater good. Her words break his heart. Sibylla approaches the dead leper king and removes his mask, revealing his disfigured face, shocking her. Shortly after, the leprosy king passes away and the entire city of Jerusalem mourns. Guy, since the death of the leper king, keeps pressuring Sibylla to keep him at her side if he wants her son to be safe, hence making him still next in line to the throne. Shortly after, the coronation of Sibylla's son successfully holds him in the office of the king for a few days by Sibylla's guidance, but soon it becomes apparent that the new king is infected with leprosy, a contagious disease that killed the leper king. Sibylla's son is unresponsive to the reaction of pain. This fills Sibylla with grief, as she is unwilling to accept the fate of her son. To save him from suffering the disease, she poisons him, instead resulting to her depression and madness. Guy, in desperate need to take matters at hand, takes the advice from Reynold to dispose of his competitor to the throne, Balian, and sends his men to assassinate him. Balian, in a state of brokenness, is defeated by Guy's men and collapses. Now that no one is in the way of Guy's plans, he releases Reynold to initiate a bloody war against Saladin by killing Saracens and Saladin's sister. This heinous act enrages Saladin, which becomes a threat to the pledge of peace. Subsequent to Sibylla's son passing is the coronation of her as the queen's successor, and Guy, her estranged husband, as the new king of Jerusalem, where havoc awaits them. As predicted, Saladin sends an emissary and demands the head of the man who killed his sister, the body of the sister, and the surrender of Jerusalem. In response, Guy responds haughtily, beheading the emissary to signal the beginning of a war. The Jerusalem cavalry is getting ready for battle when Balian unexpectedly shows up in front of the war council to prevent them from leaving the city. Tiberius agrees with Balian and banishes his knights from the assembly, which makes Guy even more anxious to go to war in order to claim the glory and victory. Guy ignores Balian and presses forward for war. Tiberius' men and Balian are left behind to protect the city. As Guy's cavalry march towards Saladin's encampment, his men become thirsty, fatigue, and even collapse from dehydration as the scorching heat of the desert land overwhelms them. Saladin takes this as an advantage and mercilessly kills all of Guy's armed men, decapitating all their heads, including the infamous Reynold, but sparing Guy only because he was unworthy to be killed by a king. Tiberius sees Guy's fallen men being eaten by a flock of birds, which makes him hopeless, hence his decision to leave Jerusalem for Cyprus. However, Balian remains faithful and is determined to protect the people of Jerusalem and goes back to the city. Balian devises a plan for defense in hopes of holding the Saracens long enough for them to come into terms. Outnumbered and without knights, Balian faces the challenge of discouragement and criticism from the patriarchs to flee instead of fighting Saladin. Balian with firm resolve ignores the patriarch and knights the men-at-arms and those capable of bearing arms to make them a better fighter, which gives them the lasting impression of knighthood. Balian predicts that this will be a long fight and is determined to hold it as long as possible. The war begins with Saladin initiating the attack by throwing fireballs to the walls of the city, causing damages. But Balian intentionally does not fight back to reserve their counterattack for the next day. As the 3 days go by, it is becoming increasingly clear that the Balians are winning the battle against Saladin's cavalry. By carrying out their daily strategic plans, they are able to kill more Saracens than Christians. As Saladin realizes that Balian is resolute and that he is on the losing side, he at last concedes and promises to securely take the Jerusalemites to other Christian countries, but only if Balian gives up Jerusalem. After accepting the offer, Balian asks, "What is the worth of Jerusalem?" To which Saladin responds, "It is nothing to the people bounded by faith and devotion to God, and everything as a city itself." The two then withdraw to their respective sides. Balian returns to the city to declare to his people the surrender of Jerusalem, with the assurance that the people are to be safely transported to other Christian lands. The people celebrate as Balian successfully defended the people of the city. Inside the city, Balian looks for Sibylla and tells her that despite the surrender of Jerusalem to Saladin, the kingdom of her brother remains in the minds and hearts of the people, and that if Sibylla renounces her position as queen, Balian will come for her. As everyone gets ready to leave the city, a humiliated Guy challenges Balian to a final duel. Balian accepts the pitiful challenge and goes on to defeat Guy, who is even more ashamed of himself now. Balian spares Guy, saying, "When you rise again, if you rise, rise a knight." As his people settle into their new home, Saladin enters Jerusalem and observes the splendor and holiness of the city. Upon noticing a cross on the ground, Saladin gingerly takes it up and sets it on the table in observance of Christianity. Balian bids his farewell to his Saracen friend, the Chancellor of Saladin, and the Saracen gives back the horse to Balian, which he accepts to use for his travel. As Balian leaves the city, he sees Sibylla along the march of the people and offers a ride to his horse as a queen who should never walk, which she declines, renouncing herself from being the queen of Jerusalem, and walks hand in hand with Balian. When Balian returns to his home in France, he notices that a lot has happened since he left the town, and he is grateful for the man that Godfrey, the leper king, and his experiences in Jerusalem have made him into. Balian's legend as the protector of Jerusalem had gone throughout Europe shortly after the England knights arrive in his village to find him to help them conquer Jerusalem from Saladin. However, Balian only humbly recognizes that he is a blacksmith. They depart Balian to carry out their mission after the knight claims to be the King of England. The movie concludes with Sibylla and Balian visiting his late wife's grave, where he pays his final respects and farewell before departing the village to begin a new life together. Thank you for watching. Please like and click the bell icon to more video. See you again.